Good day, Meticulous Moments audience. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Meticulous Moments podcast, where we facilitate community upliftment through leadership development. Today, we have the wonderful honor of spending time with James the Dragon Turner. I've got a few pointers here of his portfolio, and I'm going to introduce him as the IKTA European Light Heavyweight Full Contact Kickboxing Champion. James is also on the cusp of world honors as he prepares to fight in the IKTA Full Contact World title. Kickboxing instructor is on his portfolio. He's an author. He's a seminar instructor. He writes articles. He's also a skilled driver. That's quite the portfolio, James. Please be welcome here at Meticulous and tell us more about yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Juanita. First of all, I'd just like to say hello and thank you for inviting me onto your show and allowing me to speak to your audience. And I have seen several installments of your show, as you know, and it's always very enlightening and enjoyable watch and listen anyway, from my perspective. So I'm very honored to be invited on and to be amongst the luminaries on your show. And yeah, that's quite right. I'm indeed at the moment the IKTA European Light Heavyweight Champion. And as you mentioned, I'm now training towards that world title fight, which should be scheduled relatively soon. So I'm at the precipice of my ultimate kickboxing goal in terms of the actual sporting accomplishment of becoming a world champion. And then, of course, I do intend to stick around a good while and defend that title as the years go on. And of course, I've got other projects going on as well in the martial arts world, as I'm sure we'll discuss as time goes on. But yeah, essentially that's my main title or introductory name right now, I guess, is the European champion for the IKTA.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much for being here today. I know you're extremely busy and you make time to spend with the Meticulous Moments audience. And I want us to start right at the beginning. Let's talk about your childhood years and how it all came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a very early age, I was fascinated with martial artistry, combat sports, however you'd like to phrase it, because so many martial artists, that guests of yours that I've heard say already, it started really with me when I saw Bruce Lee, and I saw a fight scene of Bruce Lee. It was the first dojo fight scene in Fist of Fury, when Bruce Lee just wipes out the whole dojo single-handedly. Yeah. So before that, of course, large, like a lot of kids, you watch the superheroes, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all that kind of thing. I saw Bruce Lee, I saw a real life superhero, And even before I'd seen Bruce, which really got me into the martial arts specifically, I was already watching boxing as a very young kid. So a lot of people, a lot of kids my age, maybe I was a bit of an oddball maybe as a kid, because I'm talking very young here. I don't remember any of my childhood friends being necessarily all that interested in boxing. But right before I was introduced to Bruce Lee, I was already watching boxing. I was very familiar with Muhammad Ali, and I have these memories in my mind. And it's no wonder really that eventually I got led towards the kickboxing journey. But yes, I found Bruce Lee initially, fell in love with martial arts movies, and certainly my childhood into my formal years, my adolescent years, it was, obsessed with martial arts, the martial arts movies and things of that nature. I actually started training in martial arts formally in the art of Jeet Kune Do, which was Bruce Lee's martial arts philosophy that he founded, of course. My instructor was Sifu Ian Moody, who is a fantastic martial artist. I'm still friends with him to this day. And that gave me a really solid foundation in the martial arts. Along with the Jeet Kune Do, taught alongside it was Filipino Eskrima, Kali, Indonesian Silat, as well as Muay Thai and submission wrestling. So I had a really good grounding in martial arts. And that was part of the Impact Martial Arts Academy, which was the late, great Sifu Dave Carnell's institution. So I was training at one of those branches of his organization. And through that, again, I had my idols in the martial arts movies, as many of us do. And I found Don the Dragon Wilson, and he very quickly, I resonated with him. He was a huge influence to me, and he was a world kickboxing champion. So as I mentioned, as a very young kid, I'd seen boxing. I was fascinated with that. I'd seen the martial arts, so I was fascinated with the martial arts and the Bruce Lee movies, which led me into the other martial arts action stars. When I saw Don, and I just clicked, like Don was my guy in that martial arts movie star, the martial arts genre specifically. That was my guy. I gravitated towards Don, and I realized that there's this thing called kickboxing as a sport, and you can be a world champion in kickboxing. So that became my goal. Before that, I had this idea in my mind that I was going to go into martial arts movies and be an actor. So as a kid, I was already studying acting. I went to acting school, and I actually have a national diploma in acting that I achieved in college. Yeah, but I veered off into the kickboxing. I just couldn't get enough of it. I believe it was Rick the Jet Rufus who said kickboxing, it was like ice cream. You know, couldn't get enough of it. Love the training, the sparring, yeah, and the competing. So of course I turned pro as a full contact kickboxer, which has led me to where I am now. And it's interestingly, I've just relatively recently, with a little bit of encouragement from my friends, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, I've now opened the door again, and I'm exploring the movie aspirations that I had when I was very young. So it's all kind of culminating together, kind of at the apex of all these things that I'm doing. So yeah, that's kind of, I know I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. You asked me about my childhood, but that's in a nutshell where I started to where I am today. And it would be remiss of me, of course, not to mention that one thing I'm very proud of that I've done relatively recently is I co-authored a book with prolific, legendary boxing author out of Canada, Andy Dumas. We did a book on kickboxing. It's called Full Contact Kickboxing, a complete guide to training and strategies. And you probably know, Juanita, yourself, that very popular at the moment in the combat sports world. You know, you've got mixed martial arts with the UFC. That's bringing it, other than professional boxing. I mean, some people would even argue with me there. I mean, they're pretty neck and neck. They're both very popular right now. And beyond that, you've got, in terms of the combat sports, stand-up combat sports, the term kickboxing is thrown around as something of an umbrella term. But when people say kickboxing, they're generally referring to what we kind of now know as the K1 rules, under the Glory kickboxing banner, or Bellator kickboxing. And then, of course, you've got Muay Thai. And so these K1 rules, so to speak, they were kind of a Japanese derivative of Muay Thai rules, essentially, where they took out the elbows, they put more emphasis on punching, but it's kind of within the same space. Whereas certainly in the Western Hemisphere, and I know in South Africa it was very much the case as well, there was a time in the 80s and 90s when you said kickboxing, you were talking about full contact karate, or as it later became known, kickboxing, which is the sport that was started in the States in the 1970s, where basically it evolved to the point where you had the safety equipment on the feet, the shin guards, the boxing gloves, and we wear long trousers, long pants, and we kick above the waist and use the boxing technique. We fight for 12 rounds, just like in professional boxing. And that's the kickboxing that really I'm part of, a relatively small group in the kickboxing, in the martial arts world right now, who are really trying to perpetuate and bring the sport back up to its rightful place, because it's kind of fallen by the wayside in its popularity. It's such an exciting sport. I think it's all in the promotion. And if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. So with the UFC and with everything else, I think people, generations are moving fast. So there was a time when, martial artists, you say Bill Superfoot Wallace, Don the Dragon Wilson, oh yeah, sure, I know that. We're at a stage now where less and less people, if you just mention them, I can go to a professional fight gym, you've got pro fighters, and I say Don the Dragon Wilson, and I need to explain to them who he is. And that's a hard pill for me to swallow, because we're talking about some of the all-time great martial artists. And like I say, the generations move fast. So it's important. You can always find out who all these people are, especially these days. You go on the internet, you can do your research. It's not very difficult if you want to learn. But the immediacy of just knowing who these people are, like we'll always know Bruce Lee because of his legendary movie status, and various other public figures in the martial arts. But it's the names that beyond just your most mainstream public pop culture names that I think are important in the history of martial arts as we know it today, And I think the sport, even as I mentioned, of full contact kickboxing, which I'm very passionate about, it's such an exciting, dynamic sport, which requires such a high level of martial artistry, that through this book, I'll just hold it up here, Full Contact Kickboxing. We're trying to publicize the sport as well as provide a comprehensive training guide to the sport. So what is it? Kickboxing, punching and kicking above the waist, an essential skill for any martial artist, really. So basically any martial artist who's even curious about improving their striking and kicking abilities, as well as being able to defend against those strikes, you'll find a lot of information in this book about how to do that. Because I am a professional kickboxer. You know, I compete regularly against the top athletes in the world who know how to punch and kick you and not get punched and kicked themselves. So I do have a certain amount of experience with that. And of course, Andy Dumas is so prolific and accomplished in boxing. Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I hope to offer the martial arts public with this book. So yeah, it would be remiss of me not to mention that. But yeah, so that, as you can tell, certainly where I am in my life, that's where I am, very much in the full contact kickboxing space. That's what I'm trying to promote.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Thank you for giving us that overview and also for explaining the difference between kickboxing and Muay Thai. I think a lot of people sometimes, if they're not knowledgeable, about the sport or about the art, or if they're not martial artists themselves, they think it's the same thing. But when you're a martial artist and you watch that movie, that's Muay Thai, that's kickboxing. That's the bunkai of a karate kata, for instance. And I love the fact that you brought the book out so as to make sure that these amazing martial artists are remembered. And that's what we do at my MAM group as well, the Meticulous Martial Arts Mastermind. It's an amalgamation of wonderful martial artists from all different fields. We've got Qigong, we've got Shotokan, we've got Goju-Ryu, we've got almost all of the types. Some of them are fluent in all of the styles, more styles than one. And we really try and keep that love for the art alive. We cross-pollinate. We have meetings where we discuss our different styles. We have training sessions, online. And it's very important that we do that, because you mentioned it and it's true. Time is changing so fast, and we have to keep that spirit alive. We have to keep that information alive. So I absolutely commend you. I'm going to get myself a copy because we also of your book, because we also do kickboxing. And I have to agree with you. Kickboxing is definitely like ice cream. That's a very good point. So absolutely love that. Now tell us, you are busy training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us, you're training for the world title. What does your week look like? Sure. You train Mondays to Fridays, take 2 days of rest. What is that like for you? Do you have certain things that you have to do at a certain day, like Monday, working in the gym and then training? Do you do cross training? What's the training schedule like for you?
Sure. Well, it kind of relates to what you were just saying about, Juanita, in terms of the generations changing very fast, and people, information that we would take for granted because it was always very much out there in terms of the people. I mentioned Bill Wallace, Don Wilson, these names that of course, everybody knows who they are because we're in the martial arts world. And how do you train for kickboxing even? There are certain fundamental principles and time-proven principles that we know work well for the greatest fighters in the sport that ever lived. But with time moving so quickly, and I've got youngsters in the gym who are, less than 20 years old, younger than 20 years old, it's not so immediate that they would know this stuff. Where do I even start? I read somewhere that I get students saying to me, James, I heard that, I just need to sprint really fast 4 times, twice a week, and that's my cardiovascular training taken care of. And I say, well, maybe if you're going to do 3-round fights for the rest of your life, which I know some of these sports, actually they do that, so fine. But I can only tell you that for professional full contact kickboxing, if you're going to fight 12 rounds, that's not going to cut it. So essentially the training that I do, and of course it's detailed more heavily in the book, Full Contact Kickboxing. But the basic overview is essentially when I'm training for a fight, I run 5 miles in the morning. It's usually, I say between 4 to 6, but it's actually generally I've settled in now. When I'm training for a fight, I run 5 miles, and I run a hard 5 miles. So it's a minimum of 7-minute miles. So I have to run each mile 7 minutes or faster. And I incorporate some sprints and things like that. And actually the end of the run, the very end, like the last half mile or so, is purely 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off of all out sprinting, generally on an incline or up a hill. So that's my morning routine. And I go through some ab work and some stretching in the morning as well, which I do. And then I rest. So that's Monday. So when I train for a fight, it's 6 days a week. So in the morning, I do 5 miles every morning.
Yeah.
Once a week, I'll actually replace one of those runs, those 5 mile runs, with a pure interval session. Okay. So I'll do, for example, a quarter mile is about 800 meters. Excuse me, 400 meters. So I'll do those basically as fast as I can, and I'll take an active recovery of, say, basically a minute. So I'll walk for a minute, catch my breath, and then I'll blast out another quarter mile. And if you can get to the point where you can do 12 of those all out, 400 meter quarter mile sprints, what you're really doing is training your legs and your anaerobic capacity for those real hard sprints. You can't, this is what I was going back to what I was saying earlier in terms of the people who think, oh, well, I just need to do a few sprints and, in a whole week and that's it. Well, that will train your anaerobic capacity, but you do need to have that aerobic foundation, aerobic being working with oxygen, anaerobic being working without the presence of oxygen. So the daily runs, the morning runs, the 5 mile runs, they serve as a really great aerobic foundation for the rest of your training, because it's not an easy jog. It's a hard run. You're on that lactate threshold, basically that area between where you would go from aerobic crossing over into anaerobic. And then one run a week, I really focus on the anaerobic sprints. So that's my morning training, essentially. Later in the day, I'll go back to the gym and I go through my kickboxing training. So that consists of several rounds of shadow boxing. I usually, when I'm training for a fight, I'll do 10 rounds on the heavy bag straight in every workout. Usually, like I say, before that, there'll be, say, 3 to 5 rounds of shadow boxing, 10 rounds on the heavy bag. And then beyond that, I'll do some other types of bags, maybe 3 to 5 rounds on different various types of bags. More shadow boxing, maybe I'll isolate just the hands or just the kicks with some shadow boxing rounds. Jump rope, I tend to go 15 minutes straight on the jump rope. And if that day I have sparring partners available, I'll spar as well. So some days, some of that other activity might actually be cut down in the gym. I maybe won't do as much on the heavy bag on a particular day. That's the only exception. I say I always do 10 rounds on the heavy bag. Maybe the one exception to that will be if I've got a sparring partner who's come around that day to where I train, or I've gone to that person, we'll spar 10 rounds or 12 rounds instead. So basically that's how that works. 3 days, so that's basically 6 days a week. So morning running, evening kickboxing training. Now there's one additional facet to that. 3 days out of the week, I also do, so it'll be, say, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Before I do, so after the morning run, but before the evening kickboxing training, I will do half an hour or so of a full body weight training routine. So basically I'm training a balance of strength, speed, endurance, working every major body part. I don't do, say, chest one day and back the next day, kind of like a bodybuilder would do in like that body part split routine. It's a total body workout with the weights 3 days a week. And that gives me, like I say, a good balance of all of those physical attributes. So it's basically, you can look at the weight training as being every other day, essentially. And then the kickboxing training and the running is every day. So that's as succinctly as I can put it, my training for the kickboxing fights. Of course, here it is again, the book Full Contact Kickboxing. I mean, I've got a big banner obviously behind me, I guess, so like we could just use that. But I go very specifically into my protocols in that book and the various options you have around being able to train for kickboxing. As a matter of fact, the routine as it's laid out in that book is essentially the exact routine I used to win the European title last year. Wow. So I basically finished authoring the book and I said to Andy, right, I've laid out everything as succinctly as I've put it here in terms of how I do it. Because Andy, of course, is the co-author of the book. He had a lot of input as well. But by the time it came to designing the training routines and the sparring and this and that, I made a lot of suggestions and Andy signed off on them and everything else. But by the time it was all said and done, I said, right, this is pretty much as best as I can lay it out. I'm going to basically pretend now that I'm someone who's gone into the store and I've just bought the book by Andy Dumas and James Turner, and I'm going to follow this exact routine, the Champs workout it's called, And I followed that routine to the T for 6 to 8 weeks. I can't remember exactly. It was a period of around that time. And then I went and fought for the European title against the Italian champion called Damiano Pace. He's a great, accomplished kickboxer himself. And I was fortunate enough to win a 7-round unanimous decision. So I put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and put the training routine to the test. Yeah.
It was definitely tried and tested. I agree with you. And I was thinking about, as you discussed the interval training, the interval running. I remember when I was in school, when we did cross country, we used to have a hard run for 300 meters, and then we would walk for the 100 meters, and we would do like 15 or 20 of those in an afternoon. And audience, you will not believe how that builds your stamina by the time, because we did the long runs as well, the 10 kilometers, I think that's about 6 miles. But what stamina was built up through that was incredible, because we were young and we didn't understand the purpose of the exercise. But when we got to the championships, we were like, oh, okay, we understand now. Suddenly you have the stamina, and when you hit that second breath, you can just keep running and running and running, and that comes through interval training. And I know in a kickboxing match, because we do that at the dojo as well, you have to have stamina. You are using every part of your body. I would really suggest to the audience, doesn't matter what style you're in, you're gonna kick, you're gonna punch, get the book, get yourself a copy of the book, go into that training and build up that stamina, because when it's you and your partner, it's all going to come down to the person that lasts to the end. So that's a wonderful, I'm glad that you tried and tested it as well. That's amazing. You went through your own program, you won, and here you are. And that's a testimony to the other martial artists out there that it actually works.
Well, thank you very much. And you're absolutely right, Juanita. And you know from personal experience with your competitive history that just even when, as you said, you were trained from a young age. Okay, so we have to do these sprints, these relays, and then we have to go and run these long runs as well. Oh, why do we have to do all this stuff? But we knew then it was already, we'd found the blueprint by that point. But, things come and go in fads. And for the past 10, 15 years, certainly, we've been in a fad of just go and train really hard for a really limited period of time and call it a day. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's that the athletes are lazy, but I do think that there's a little bit of lazy culture that's somehow worked its way into the martial arts space, because it's all about justifying not having to go out and run 5 miles or 6 miles, for example. We're just trying to get away from that as much as possible. So the rounds of the fights have been reduced. So a lot of organizations, they'll only do like 3 rounds. And it's like, why is that? It definitely, we seem to be in a fad of, oh, that's all passe. You just got to train really hard and stop, train really hard and stop. That's a part of the training, certainly. You need to be able to have those bursts of explosive combinations. Yes. As you mentioned, you've got to have the foundation of the aerobic work as well. And that's what you get from the long runs, combine it with the sprint work, and you've got it made. I don't know how that could ever be something that people would want to disagree with, or why they would justify it. I mean, you've got the whole complement of training at that point. So, it's interesting you say that you know that from your own experience, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that stayed with me, and that's still how I train today, because I saw that it worked for me in those years. Now I want to ask you, you studied, you educated yourself as well. I remember making notes in my book, you're educated, you're authentic martial artist. Tell us more about the years of study. What did you go into? Which direction did you go into?
Yes, well, I actually, I have a degree, a bachelor's degree in sports science. It's a bachelor's degree with honors that I achieved. Basically, it's a university degree. So I was always a keen reader and enthusiast of not just the traditional martial arts training, but this is definitely an influence from Bruce Lee, because I when I was a kid, and still to this day, but as you know, as I was growing up, I was such a huge Bruce Lee fan, and I knew that he had a vast library of books, and he always had a thirst for learning more and cultivating his own, really his own education and knowledge that could be applied to his martial arts that he loved so much. And it was he realized that he had to be open-minded enough, or discerning-minded enough, as he used to say, to be able to absorb information, or at least analyze information, and realize what would be, as the saying goes, useful to him
Yeah.
or what was not worth keeping, or what he would discard. So with that said, I realized that the more I understood about physiology, human biology, and how it pertains to exercise and physical training, that would only help me in getting my body in the best shape possible. Of course, as you know, I'm sure as well, martial arts is only to a certain degree on a physical level.
Yes, that's,
you know, there is.
Yeah.
Yes, there is, of course, the psychological aptitude. Without that, you don't have, you could be in the best shape possible, but without the psychological aptitude for the activity that you're doing, nothing comes to the forefront. So the mental aspect, the spiritual aspect, if you want to call it that, the more kind of enlightened view on what you're doing, that higher level of understanding of what you're doing, that's really what makes the difference and brings you in onto that next level of understanding of martial arts and the ability to be able to do it. But certainly from the physical aspect, I didn't want to have any gaping holes or weaknesses from that perspective. So I mean, sports science is an ever-evolving science. I mean, we're learning new things all the time. There are papers that get published based on recent studies that later get contradicted 6 months later by something that comes out. It's like, okay, well, which one was correct? And then, it takes researchers to pull a meta-analysis of the whole weight of information that we know and find, well, it's still kind of inconclusive. I guess we're going to have to do more studies. It just never ends. But we've got a pretty good idea. Yeah, absolutely. But I think we can see from even fighters from the 70s, the 80s, into the 90s, we know how to get in shape for 12-round kickboxing fights. And that's what I'm concerned with. So I wanted to just make sure I had a thorough understanding. And if there were any question marks with how I could improve upon things, at least then I'd gone that extra mile to study it and have that physiological information just basically ingrained in me. And Bill Superfoot Wallace had a master's degree in kinesiology and physiology. He was really the inspiration for me to go into further education with the sports science training. And what I learned, basically, I did learn some new things. I have a deeper understanding of physical training, nutrition, all of the things that go around that. But I basically learned that they had it right, even in the 70s. We might have some more clarification. Yeah, absolutely. We may have technically more knowledge and a deeper level of understanding of why certain things work. But in terms of ripping up the script and starting all over again, we don't need to do that. We know that the running, the kickboxing training, the bag work, the sparring, the drills, the weight training, the push-ups, the pull-ups, the dips, the squats, all of that basic stuff done on a regular, consistent basis, that's what's going to make kickboxing champions. And that hasn't changed. But to answer your question, yeah, that was basically my further education in the kickboxing field. It was going to educate myself as much as possible from a sports science perspective. I didn't study psychology as its own thing. I did study some sports psychology as a part of my sports science degree. So there was quite a lot of sports psychology directly, directly infused into what I was doing in my sports science degree. But I do have friends who have studied clinical psychology, for example, as its own thing. So I never took that formally to that level, but I have done my own independent reading quite a lot on psychology, even outside of my sports science degree, because as I mentioned, I do believe in the power of the mind greatly as it pertains to the martial arts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And, there's nothing like martial arts to make you mentally strong. It really pushes you to your limits. It really stretches everything that you thought you believed in, everything that you thought you were capable of doing. And that's the magic of martial arts. And I also found that martial arts teaches us the difference between being switched on for that fight and being in this state of, negative anxiety. We kind of get to a place where we know we're switched on, we're ready for the fight, but still we have that equanimity. We still have that peace. I know that I trained. I know I can do this. I'm mentally strong. How would you speak to martial artists out there? Because I find that a lot. I've worked with a lot of people in my years that I was pastoring churches, and a lot of people suffer from anxiety, whether it's if they have to go out and compete in another sport, whether it's stuff that they have to, things that they have to learn, new skills and attributes they have to gain in the corporate world, whether they're martial artists that are going into big championships. Some of them struggle with anxiety, but not good nerves. The anxiety of overthinking, the anxiety of overanalyzing. How would you advise them to get to that place where they switched on for the fight, where they're ready to compete, but they still have that peacefulness inside them?
It's a very good question, Juanita. And I think, as you mentioned, not the good nerves anymore. There was a time when athletes, they would be very clued into, yeah, I'm a little nervous. I got the butterflies, but that's good. It loosens me up, and I know I'm going to be sharp when I get into the ring. But we have basically a cultural issue, really, of heightened mental health issues, anxiety, depression, nervousness, lack of confidence and assertiveness. It's really like a wider public issue, and I really don't I don't claim to have all the answers, but you and I as martial artists know that if only more of these people were exposed to the martial arts and had the ability and the encouragement to develop a certain level of mental fortitude, because certainly in the martial arts, I believe good martial artists, we are empathetic people. We found, a lot of us found the martial arts rather, as youngsters, because we didn't necessarily fit in all respects to all the other kids in school. I can speak personally. When everybody was interested in playing football or soccer, I never really had any interest in it. I was the oddball. I was interested in martial arts and acting and music, and I was an unusual child from that perspective. So we're empathetic people. We're not ones to, if someone says I have anxiety, we're not just going to say, "Oh, toughen up."
That's it.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
We need more than that. So there's a certain level of empathy, and a good martial arts instructor will nurture a student in that way. But at a certain point, I also have some views from the other perspective, because I feel like in society, we're in danger of being so mollycoddling that we don't develop any mental toughness at all. Absolutely. So it's difficult. You see, yeah, absolutely. Now, some people might be offended by what I just said, but I think I've just prefaced it. If they listened to what I just said, I can see it from both sides. We know as martial artists that, yes, we're compassionate people as martial artists. We care about people. We want to develop a society of exemplary individuals. That's what the martial arts are all about. But at the same time, it's difficult, because I almost feel some people, they need to sometimes just have a little bit of, not tough love, but they need to toughen up a little bit. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's the culture that they've been born into. It's all very much, it's almost overly kind of self-restrictive. They're so caught up in their own thoughts and feelings that at a certain point, it's like, do you know what, man? You just need to put those running shoes on, go for a run. You need to come back here. We need to do some training. And I'm going to tell you as a coach, you're doing great. You're doing much better. I believe in you. You can do this. And do you know what? That cultivates that mental aptitude. I know for a fact, as I've already made it very clear, I'm sure, I grew up, I was a hero worshiper. I loved Bruce Lee, and kickboxing, I found Don the Dragon Wilson, and many others. My instructor in the IKTA, the Intercontinental Kick Thai Boxing Association, Massimo Brizzi from Italy. Again, much like Don Wilson, a kickboxer I absolutely idolized and I became friends with, and later I trained with him. I mean, what a great inspiration that is for me. Our good friend Sensei Ron Murray, one of the most wonderful people. Absolutely. Hi, Sensei Ron, if you're watching this. And I'm sure, I'm not just saying it because he's watching, he knows this, but I love that man. He's just a phenomenal individual in all respects. Absolutely. He's overcome, injuries, illnesses, difficulties in life, as we all have. But Ron's really had his run of adversity over the years, and he just gets up, keeps his chin down. I don't say chin up, which is in England, everybody says, I'll keep your chin up. I say chin down, hands up. And that's what Ron has always done. Absolutely. And he keeps that positive mental attitude, and he smiles and he just goes for it. He's a fantastic man, as you know, his wife Tracy as well, and his whole
Yes,
family, his son Kyle, and he's got several daughters as well who are all very accomplished in the martial arts and beyond in various fields. So yeah, wonderful family. So I've always looked to positive people for inspiration myself. I can say that. I'm not just going to say it's all me. I wouldn't have necessarily known all this stuff if it was just me. I'm very fortunate, you know, I've got good parents, which I know many of the people even and many of my students, people I've met, they've not had that stable family environment necessarily. So they've really had to pull their trousers up, so to speak, and look for inspiration or motivation to really just go through life. And that's, I'm sure a lot of us in the martial arts, a lot of people, they were drawn to Bruce Lee or whoever their heroes in the martial arts are, because maybe they lacked that support from having loving parents, maybe, or a good family environment. Not everybody, but some people, they've had to go through that. I've been lucky that I didn't have that kind of adversity, but I know many people have. So what I would say is very long-winded. I just wanted to give a little bit of kind of my perspective on this subject. But what I would encourage martial artists to do, or anybody listening to this in any walk of life that's struggling with anxiety, they're afraid to pursue their goals, what I would tell them in simple terms, because I'm not going to be able to give obviously you know, a whole seminar on it just in our discussion this afternoon, but I would say, and this is, I even tell myself this sometimes, you know, we've got one life.
Yes.
And you could say, you know, you could say, oh, well, that's just a selfish way of looking at it. But if the best thing I can do for people who know me, for people who, maybe my students, maybe people who look up to me, people who I look up to, who I've been lucky to become friends with over the years, what's the best thing I can do is just to chin down, hands up, pursue my goals to the best of my ability. And what's that going to do? That is going to inspire other people to do the same thing. So if you want a world where you've got people doing their best, and how do you make the world a better place? Charity, compassion, yes, absolutely. But also being true to yourself. You know, pursue your goals. As long as you're not hurting anybody else,
yes, that's
you can go and achieve your goals. Yeah, and inspire. As long as you're not ripping people off and running over people or doing people a disservice to get to where you want to go. I'm not a believer in that. But do things honestly and with integrity, and you're setting a good example for everybody. So anybody who's nervous, I would encourage them to realize that if you set a goal in mind, you say, right, I'm super passionate about this. I want to pursue this goal, whether it's getting their next belt grading in martial arts, their next colored belt, or winning a championship, or just completing a course of self-defense training, getting fitter, losing a little bit of weight, or putting on some muscle, whatever it might be. If you say, right, I want to accomplish this goal, if you start taking action steps towards that goal, and it's not easy to start with, you have to get in the habit of, okay, I've got to, what's my nutrition looking like? What shall I eat? At what time shall I get up in the morning? I've got to be disciplined. I've got to make sure I get to bed on time so I can get up early, be well slept. And I'm going to do all these things. If you start managing your life and putting things in this order of priority, you will be helping yourself believe that you can do it. And it's like the law of the universe. If you start putting these things in line, you will be on the fast road to your goal.
That's it.
I believe it was Albert Einstein who eventually later in life, he acknowledged that subatomic particles react differently when people are looking at them. So what does that mean? He didn't believe that to start with. He didn't necessarily conclude that, but he said, no, I have to admit that, yeah, we are actually affecting our own reality. It's like the law of man. The universe kind of aligns to push us forward in what we're doing. So if you set everything up and you say, I'm going to make a solid commitment to do this, I'm just going to try hard, because at least I'll have the pride in knowing that I tried my best. You start going for it. If you work hard at it, you will accomplish those goals. So there's nothing to be scared of. There's nothing to be nervous about. You know, it's what do you want? Do you want to do this or not? Well, I would like to, really. Well, why don't you do it? Well, I'm nervous. What are you nervous about? Well, I might fail. Okay, I failed before. World didn't end. You know, I came back. I've lost fights. I got I said I got knocked out in the second round of the biggest fight of my career to that point in front of a sold-out auditorium. I was flat on my face. I got knocked out. It's a very humiliating thing. Some people might think, oh, I don't want to have to experience that. Well, unless you're a professional kickboxer, I mean, you probably won't have to experience that. But whatever
Yeah.
your goal is, eventually, I took some time. I went back to the drawing board, and I decided, yes, there are going to be setbacks. I mean, you can have a setback in terms of losing a kickboxing fight, or you could have a setback in that you didn't sleep a wink. Maybe the night before you were ill and you couldn't sleep, you were sick. Oh, well, now I can't get up and run like I wanted to because I haven't slept. And you're going to have these problems. You're going to have issues along the way. The real test of, I guess, like you say, that mental fortitude, that mental strength is are you going to let that completely curtail you? Or are you going to dust yourself off? You're going to get back up, your chin down, and your hands up, and you're just going to keep going. Because as I mentioned earlier, we've got one life.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you what, for me, I don't want to have any regrets in that I didn't do what I really wanted to do deep down. I don't want to have any regrets. I don't want to go, oh, well, it was good enough. Was it good enough? Not for me. Not for me. To say, oh, it was fine. I did enough. I didn't actually do what I wanted to do, but, oh, I'm happy. I'm sat here on the sofa now. I've got a cup of coffee. It's all good. Is it? No, not for me. I want to accomplish my goals.
Oh,
and
yes.
That's why I've taken it to the level I have. Where, that's for me. I think if I can encourage people to have that mindset, I think goal setting is very important in life. It keeps us motivated. We always want to aspire to the next goal. I think that's your path to a world of happy people. I mean, they're not going to be happy every day because some days you're going to have setbacks. And you're going to be frustrated.
That's life.
But it's life. But don't lose your temper. Don't take it out on your loved ones or your friends. It's not their fault. They're here to support you. So just dust yourself off, chin down, hands up, and go again. So it's hard. It's easier said than done. I realize. Trust me, people listening to this, if you embrace that mentality, you'll be a winner. In the long run, you will be a winner.
I agree. I agree with you completely. Impeccable answer. I always tell people I don't live with regrets. There's not a day I say something if I want to say it. I don't leave things for the next day because I've dealt with people during, the course of my life that have gone through situations and I learned through their mistakes. You don't live with regrets. You do those things. You get to those things. You push through. You don't give up. You stand up. We've all had times that we've lost fights. We've all had times where we felt embarrassed about, maybe a fight that we lost. We've all had those black eyes. And, then next time you just remember your hands went up. And pain is the best teacher. I'll just say that to the audience. If you've been punched enough on the nose or in the face, pain is it's the best teacher. So, manifesting that the gratitude to the universe, getting in alignment with yourself and with the universe, really believing in yourself, that does take practice. But at the end, it's so worth it because you get to know that you can push yourself. You get to know that you can evolve, you can change, you can learn, you can do better. So, and I think that's what martial arts instill in us. And I absolutely loved your answer. Listen to James, audience, because he's been there. He is doing that and, working hard towards his future. And that brings me to the next question. I want to ask you, what is your 5-year plan? I know, you're going to compete in the world title championship. Tell us, what is your 5-year plan?
Very good question, and it's something that I do consider a lot, and the plans don't always necessarily stay the same. I mean, very much as in the case in martial arts, in combat, in life, situations arise, and we have to adapt to those situations as they present themselves. So the answer I give today on the 15th of July, 2023, guys, if you're watching Meticulous Moments Classics in 2 years' time, if you're watching this in 2025, don't hold this against me because I may have changed my answer a little bit, but message me on Facebook. Yeah, I know, it changed a little bit. But basically, my 5-year plan for now, I'm on the precipice, like I say, of competing for the world title. Yes. And that's where I'm concentrating all my efforts in kickboxing, is to win that world title, which is my goal, and defend it. I mean, I love to compete. I'm in great shape, and as long as I'm able to do so, I will continue to compete. And I could win the title, I could lose it, and I might have to win it again. But I don't have any. It's the reality. I mean, it could happen. I don't expect it to, but I've lost before. I made a mistake, I lost. But the last time, like I mentioned, that fight that I lost, I actually got stopped in the second round, very early in the fight. I overcome a lot of obstacles even to get there, because I had, we had COVID, lockdown, everything happened. My fight got delayed. And I lost this big title fight. After all that, I got in there and I made a mistake. I got hit with a punch I didn't see, and I lost. And I was like, oh no. Well, anyway, I went back to the drawing board. I evaluated things. I looked at where I was in my career. I made some adjustments in my training to my mental approach. I learned from my mistake and how to identify not to make that mistake again. And within a year from that loss, where I was at my lowest low, I was face down on the floor thinking, oh, well, there you go. That's how some people would look at that and probably think that's how the story ends. But within a year, I was the European champion, #1 world contender. Within a year. Well, thank you. I'm just giving an example of how, yes, we can set goals, and it's kind of, I know we're kind of going a little bit back to the previous answer now, but we can have goals and we can be derailed, but ultimately we need to adapt and still set those goals. And as you say, whether it's a 5-year plan or however you lay it out, you still got to have an eye to the future to keep yourself motivated. That's how you stay alive, right? And really living, not existing, but being alive.
Yeah.
Is to have those goals and you're working towards something, then you're really living. So certainly that's what I plan to do with the kickboxing. As well as that, I'm also the IKTA UK representative for the Intercontinental Kickboxing Association. So with that, I teach at a gym in Cornwall, England called Absolute MMA, which I'm the kickboxing instructor for the gym. We basically have top exponents in the various martial arts disciplines, and we're all converged in the southwest of England. So it's really the mecca of martial arts for the southwest of England or for Cornwall, where we've got these top instructors in each of the different disciplines. I mean, I'm the kickboxing instructor, but we've got boxing, we've got K1, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, Taekwondo, mixed martial arts. We've got experts in all of these fields, top experts in all of these fields. And so with the kickboxing curriculum of the IKTA, I'm growing that in England, and I'm ranking students and instructors and growing the organization. So that's a big passion of mine to do that, because the IKTA is a great organization. It really represents kickboxing in the right way. So as an ambassador for them, as well as one of its preeminent champions, I'm very keen to grow that organization in England and across the world as well. I'm very keen to be a part of that. Other than that, as I mentioned to you on off air when we spoke a few days ago, I'm actually involved in an upcoming martial arts film, which the finer details of that aren't so well defined right now, because it's still very much in development. So, loose lips sink ships. So I don't want to say too much, but basically, absolutely. But basically, I'm involved in a film that's in development, and it's one of those things as well where destiny kind of converges all at the same time, because as I mentioned to you, a real hero of mine, a tremendous actor who starred in the classic 1980s TV series Stingray, referring to the Corvette Stingray that the character drove, and he had an alias. He went by Stingray, was the character. It's a classic award-winning TV show from the 1980s that was on NBC. Star of that show is Nick Mancuso. So big hero of mine. And I just this year, I went through the whole Stingray series, and I really wanted to write an article about the show for the Corvette Club UK magazine, because this year is the 70th anniversary of the Corvette, since the very first model came out in 1953. So I thought, that's really a fantastic thing to do. And I've been very lucky over the years. Many people I admired, as I've mentioned several of them already, I've been able to become friends with. Because they're in that martial arts space, and I've been able to find them. But I was able to contact Nick Mancuso, who is a martial artist as well, by the way. He's an accomplished Aikido practitioner. And I was able to interview him for this magazine article on Stingray, which was very well received, I'm very happy to say. And around this time, I went to a martial arts event, and I was approached by some well-known martial arts luminaries in the UK. Very respectable, well-known people, such as Andrew Statton and Matt Routledge. Basically, they're Bruce Lee authorities in the UK, very internationally respected. And I was approached about being involved in this film. Andrew has been I must say, he's a fantastic man, and he's really been a great supporter of me over the years. And every year when he sees me at these martial arts expos, he says, James, I haven't seen you in any films recently. And I said, oh, Andrew, I know, I'd love to do it, but I'm very busy with the kickboxing and the martial arts. And this is where one of my weaknesses has been kind of exposed, because the acting and the film aspirations is something I would love to do. But because I was so involved with the kickboxing, it was kind of this scary thing over there. I almost felt like I didn't have an in anymore, you know? I felt so disconnected because I was so involved in the kickboxing. And finally, Andrew said, right, come and meet Matt, the film director. I knew who he was, I just hadn't met him yet. And yeah, we had a discussion, and I was interviewed as well. I believe that interview is going to be coming out fairly soon. And so basically, yeah, we're looking, we have an eye to this film that I'm going to be a part of, and I'm hoping it's going to be the start of an ongoing quest for me, an ongoing venture in terms of acting. So, as I mentioned, I'm kind of bringing this all around. So I was in regular communication with Nick Mancuso, the legendary actor, after he'd helped me with the Stingray article, and I'd sent him the finished article. And Nick had just happened to suggest to me, he said, James, you know, you should think about a career in film. And I said, it's funny you should say that, Nick, because just this past weekend, I've been approached about being in this film. And, you know, my other acting hero, as I mentioned earlier, Don the Dragon Wilson, who also inspired me to become a kickboxer, he had mentioned to me several years before that I should consider this. So I said to Nick, look, it's crazy how this has all kind of come together at the same time. But if I'm going to do this, I'm a bit rusty. So if I'm going to get back into this, I want to do it in the right way. Would you consider training me as an actor? And I'm very lucky and very fortunate that Nick said yes. So he's taken me under his wing, and I'm doing some specialized acting training with Nick Mancuso and his TOP system of acting. It's called TOP. It's basically an acronym. Basically, it's tension or tensegrities, T. O is object or inner object, and P stands for persona. And it's a triangle system. It's kind of like, it's very relatable to martial artistry. Nick is a very broadly educated individual, and he's brought a lot of elements of education in various fields. He's a scientist, many things to converge in this system of acting. So it's very enjoyable for me because as a martial artist and as someone who, as I mentioned, I've been an admirer and a fan of Nick Mancuso for many years, I think I recognized from afar that we were similar people. So I'm very much clicking with this system, and it's a pleasure for me to be learning from someone who I admire so much, as I've been able to do in the martial arts with Don the Dragon Wilson, with Massimo Brizzi, regularly consulting people like Sensei Ron Murray, Curtis Bush, great Scott Ashley. I mean, it just goes on and on. So yeah, that's something I'm really enjoying doing. I'm training in acting with you know, a legendary all-time great actor, and I'm opening the door again to pursuing a career in film. I guess I'm now saying it publicly. It's not really something I'm kind of quietly doing in the shadows now. So yeah, that's something I'm looking towards as well. No, thank you very much. So certainly, you know, what I said earlier about pursue your dreams and don't hold back. Well, you know, competing as a world championship kickboxer, acting in martial arts movies, growing the martial art and the sport that I love, doing all these things at the same time, that to me is living a full life. And if I can do that, and I can set the example to people to just do the same as me, or your version of that. What are the things that you're passionate about? Pursue them. If you're inspired by people, you know, the old saying, never meet your heroes. I'm not the person to ask about that, because I've met my heroes. And they've been nothing but wonderful experiences. I guess a reason for that, without even realizing it, as I was a kid into a young man growing up, I think I chose my heroes carefully. You know?
Good point.
So when I met them, I wasn't disappointed. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, if you choose a hero who's known to be, you know, he's like an or he or she is known to be not the best role model for kids a lot of the time, you know, maybe you'll be a little disappointed when you meet that hero, you know. But I really have to give a lot of credit to the people who inspired me from a young age to today. They've really inspired the trajectory of my life. I'm just following in their footsteps. And if I can inspire people to do the same thing, or in their own walks of life, if I can just impart some positivity and some belief that you can really go after and achieve what you want to achieve, then I think that's what it's all about, right? Helping other people. I mean, you're not going to get a better satisfaction than doing that. But yeah, basically that's my 5-year plan. It's the World Championship Kickboxing, the acting career, and the promoting and the perpetuating of the martial arts. That's basically what I'm looking at doing over the next 5 years, in a nutshell, at least. Hopefully I can, maybe if we speak again in the future, I can give a more fleshed out answer again. We'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely. You know, James, I want to tell you that what is meant for you will find you. And I mean, you had that dream since you were a child that you wanted to do martial arts movies, and it's happening now. And it all happens in the right time. It's the right time. The synchronicities are there. The alignment is there. It's happening the way it's supposed to happen. So, you know, it's been wonderful to spend time with you here. I want to ask you, I always ask the guests at the end of the show for words of wisdom, and you've shared so much wisdom already. But would you leave them with a single thought? You know, we've been educated on so many points today. It was really such a edifying conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I feel motivated and inspired, looking at things, you know, in a new manner as well. What are words of wisdom that you would leave the audience with? And let's do a session again in the future and look back, you know, and talk about what's happened with Meticulous and with you and, you know, everything in the interim. That would be impeccable.
Well, thank you very much. And as you mentioned, I have already, you know, I can, as they say, talk for England. So I know I've already imparted quite a lot and a lot of information there. But I will try. Yeah, I will try to leave a nice, succinct thought for everybody, a takeaway that when it's all said and done, they'll remember. Whatever your situation in life, whatever difficulties you may be going through, if you're listening to this, you're still living, you're still breathing. And I would encourage you, and I would encourage you sincerely, and I mean this, to focus on what it is that you love, what you're passionate about, and pursue it in whatever capacity you're able to do. Involve yourself with what you love and go for it. And, you know, if anybody listening to this, if I can be of any more inspiration in that way, or I should say, if I can provide any more information in terms of what I mean, clarification, I'm pretty easy to find. So you should be able to find me. I'd be happy to help and or help provide some guidance in that way. So yes, I would encourage everybody listening to this, please follow your dreams, follow your passions, make no apologies for it. You know, treat your friends and family well. Don't, again, as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to go running over people or disregarding your responsibilities or things that are important, people that are important in your life. Don't, you know, damage your relationships in the pursuit of this. This is something that's going to this is something that's going to complement your life, not harm your life. So you can do that. You'll find out how to manage that as you go. But just make some time each day to pursue your passion and really go for it. That's my parting word for today. That was as, I guess, short and succinct as James the Dragon Turner is able to make it. I'm still working on that. We were all trying to improve, right? I'm trying to give shorter answers. It's always a work in progress.
We loved your long answers. That's how we learn. No, you were an
absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Guest. Thank you so much, James. We appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. We cheer you on, and we know you're going to be successful in all your goals and dreams. And I agree with you. Let's pursue our life's missions. Let's pursue our dreams. And I think that's when we put the fear aside and we really pursue, like you said, then we stop existing and we start living. So just go for it. If you make a mistake or if you fail a few times, it's okay. You're going to get there in the end. So thank you so much for today. We appreciate you, Us, and all the best for you.
Thank you very much, Juanita. Congratulations on your tremendous show and bringing all these martial artists together. The masterminds, as you referred to them, I think what you're doing is fantastic. a fantastic pursuit. And please don't hesitate to contact me if I can help in any way, like I say, moving forward. Yeah, well done. Congratulations. Thank you for having me on. And us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Juanita. Take care.
Thank you. You too.